but
I'm going
it's
to go
all
ahead
good.
and start the recording just in case we say something really compelling and exciting that we want to make sure we capture.
Super.
Thank you, first of all, for talking with me. It's interesting. How do you know Betsy?
So Betsy and I'm originally from the Cleveland area, as is Betsy. My family and I just moved to Colorado. But Betsy and I have sort of found ourselves in similar places multiple times, and we're now in a mastermind together, and we just really connect. A lot of we don't do the same work, but we both are very very focused on creating our lives, living our lives consciously, constantly getting better. And she and I we sort of have this, I'd say there's sort of like a bond there, just a like-minded type of mindset that she and I have. And so, yeah, so similar place that we're from, but it's more like a connection of similar values, I'd say.
Yeah, similar, like where you're from, where you're coming from, right?
Yes, indeed, absolutely.
Nice. I am trying to get the color, the
Oh yeah, I know. It's a constant game of like, where am I at? Where's the light? Changes throughout the day.
I know, it's funny because I always like come to these things as if I'm the only one who's ever going to see them, so sometimes my hair's a mess. I never have makeup on, and somebody I interviewed said, "Oh, I guess we're not going to publish this video." And I said, "Oh yeah, we are." Because I just like come in from the garden and I have a hat on. Like, well, hey, this is the package.
Well, I think there's a lot of, I could have spent the last hour and a half making myself look really nice, or I could have spent it with my son outside by the river. And
Exactly.
That was more important. So
Exactly. I 100% agree. And that's like what you're all about, right? Like being what's important, your message that you share with people is like,
yes.
Oops, my alarm's going off to tell me it's 5 o'clock. I snoozed it before by mistake. Sorry, we don't need that going off the whole time. Thank you. Okay. But yeah, I try not to like ask the same questions that everybody else asks you when they interview you and stuff, and try to be a little bit have a conversation that's a little bit more, I don't know, out of the box or whatever, So but I also want to make sure that everything that you want to talk about gets covered, things about your business, things that you want to share, anything like that. So
Sure.
feel free to interject, especially if there's like a little opening, say, oh, by the way, that's just what happens in my, retreat or whatever.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I guess I want to start off. How long have you been living in Colorado? What made you make that change?
Yeah. So we've been living in Colorado for a month.
Oh, wow. It's recent.
Yeah.
Oh,
Very recent.
congratulations.
Thank
Wow.
you. Yeah. And it's real interesting. So my husband and I have been married for 20 years. Our son is 12. And we are from the Cleveland, Ohio area. We lived there pretty much our whole lives, except for when we took a little expat assignment and lived in India for a couple years.
Wow.
All of our families there. And we just felt a real sense of obligation to stay. But we weren't happy.
Yeah.
And we found ourselves, so last fall, we kept finding ourselves really complaining a lot about Ohio. Really just complaining and just saying, oh, we want to be in Colorado. We want to be in Colorado. And we said, okay, well, are we going to be the people who just complain and don't do anything about it? Or are we going to do something about it? So we either need to quit complaining or we need to do something about it. And so we decided that we really needed to think about it and then have a very serious conversation. So the Saturday after Christmas, and I remember this distinctly because in Ohio, the weather was actually really it was quite a beautiful day. And we went to a place that's about a half hour away from our house to take a hike. And the whole objective was, what's our vision of our life and what's our vision of who we are as a family? And so we went into the woods and we had this conversation, and we came to the conclusion that we needed to move. It wasn't gonna, it just, no matter how disappointed our parents would be, no matter how much a sense of obligation we feel we have to them, we have to live our lives and we have to go. And our son, Todd and I, my husband and I, originally had thought, well, we're going to do this when Daniel gets out of high school, and we thought, Daniel doesn't want to do this. And Daniel said, no, I really do want to go. And I want to go before I go to high school so I can be established. He's going into 7th grade. He said, I really want to be in the place where I'm going to go to high school in that community by the time I'm in 8th grade. Oh. And so Todd and I said, well, okay, darn, our excuse, our convenient
right
excuse is gone. And we started to get comfortable with saying we're moving to Colorado. We're moving to Colorado. And why Colorado? It's the one place the three of us could agree on that we all really love. There are some places that I would say I would be really happy living there. There are some places that Daniel and Todd would say I'd be really happy living there. But the one place we could all get like really connected to is Colorado. Mm-hmm. Nature, active lifestyle, being able to be more just connected spiritually with the world around us. Yeah. And so it took us a couple, let's say like 6 weeks to like kind of let this sink in. And I was at a meeting, and one of the women in the meeting is a realtor. And Amber stood up and she said, this is really a seller's market. And I went home and I told Todd, this realtor's saying this. I think we really need to think about putting the house up for sale. And then all of it's like, this is like becoming really real. And so then the next day she friends me on Facebook. And then there were some other things that happened. It just all seemed to be very aligning. And I said, I think we really need to, we really need to think about this. So long story short, we have her over. We decide we're going for it. We are going to tell the parents, we're going to make it happen, and we're going to put it on the market on March 18th. So the week before putting it on the market, the whole COVID-19 thing just gets really, really nuts. And we're thinking, are we crazy for leaving this house on the market? And the house was kind of a unique house in the community. It was a more expensive house in the community. It had an in-ground pool. We were thinking this could take a really long time. But we thought, we really feel that we need to do this. So what the heck, we're going to put it on the market. And if it's on the market for a year, big deal. Well, 2 days later, a family walks in, comes to see the house. 3 days later, we have the offer that we wanted for the money we wanted. And they're dying to get in the house because they've been living in an apartment for 18 months, looking for the perfect house for them. And they really want us to be out in 30 days.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's get moving.
And so we did. And, it's been really interesting to see how everything is aligned. And it's like, I say it was like this really ripe intention. Like God, the universe, whatever you believe, was just like, all right, already. I've been waiting for you to get off your butt and do this, So get out there to the mountains. And we couldn't leave Ohio just yet because we had a number of things we had to handle before leaving for Colorado. And we rented the most beautiful house on the lake in Ohio. It was like magnificent. And we're in Colorado right now in a little town called Buena Vista, which is right amongst what are called the Collegiate Peaks. all these beautiful peaks that are over 14,000 feet in elevation, and it's magnificent. Next week we're going to Colorado Springs, and we don't know. People ask me, well, where are you going to settle? We don't know yet. We're trying some different places out, so we don't make a decision. We've been here so many times, but traveling as a tourist is so different than living.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out school for Daniel to make sure we put him in the best place socially, emotionally, mentally, educationally, etc. And I'm so grateful. So that's how we got to Colorado. I know that was a longer answer than you probably expected, but it's so a part of who we are as a family. It's so a part of the journey that we are on to honor our authenticity and honor what we believe, deep inside in our souls we're meant to be doing.
How would you, since you brought it up, how would you describe to someone your journey that you're on as a family?
Yeah, some days I describe it as a magic carpet ride, and some days I describe it as not quite so magical, because when you're in the midst of so much change, it is challenging. But what I would describe it as is a journey of three souls journeying, who have been brought together in this life, creating together and creating a life together and supporting each other, and to bring this down to not up here in the super spiritual realm, but to just bring it down to reality. It's three people who are super committed to each other and trying every day to get better and to be ourselves and to support each other. One thing that we don't enable each other in our bad habits. We call each other out, and we all take responsibility for our own happiness. And that has those two things have served us really well. But that means that there's difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And it means too, when you go through such rapid change, there are times when you kind of contract back in and suck back in, and whew, what did I do? I need to hibernate here and get used to this for a little while. And that's for anybody, a family. I talk to a lot of people, and I ask people, how would you describe your family? And one of the things that saddens me is so many times I get this blank stare or this silence on the other end of a phone or video. And then out mutters something like, well, we're pretty good, or we do some fun things. And it astonishes me how many really, really successful people who have an extremely high standard for themselves in their professional lives are willing to settle for just crumbs in their personal lives. And our family has not always been where we are today. We've been through addiction. We've been through some really, really deep valleys. But when you stay in the tough stuff and the hard conversations, what you can come out with is better than I could ever have imagined.
Amazing. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I know my nephew's now turned 13, and his mother's like, he won't even talk to me anymore. You know what I mean? He's just like, who is he? I can't communicate with him. He's always sulky and and I think, your son's still 12, so it could happen, I suppose, but it sounds like you've got that communication path going.
We do. Kids they're people who are trying to figure out everything in the world, and they have a lot of challenging days, especially right now in very limited communication with other people who are their age, who they can relate to on that level.
Yeah.
But one of the things I will tell people is get your kids outside.
Yeah.
Outside, having an experience with you, not on the soccer field, baseball field, but outside in the woods, on a trail, without electronics. No electronics unless it's for a trail map. I am a hiker. I love the forest. We all feel at home there, but it is a special place. And being outdoors and eliminating the rest of the noise is one of the best places to foster those relationships.
I think it must be hard. And I'm just thinking again, my nephew, that's my limited experience with children, but you know, he doesn't necessarily want to come and stay at my house anymore because you know, he can't even connect to the internet at my house. So it's like he feels like has this like cold turkey for electronics that he's just not accustomed to. And I think he just doesn't want to even go there. So I don't know how I can, you know, encourage him to. He always wants to know, well, what are we going to do? If I come up to see you, what are we going to do? And I have to give him this list of like 57 possibilities of things that we could do. And then he'll tick them off. Okay, we've done everything. Can I go home now?
Mm. Well, and you know, you bring up a really good point, and something that is a huge challenge for parents right now is the electronics use. And it's such a balance because electronics are part of our world, they're part of our lives. They're great tools for safety, for information, they're used in schools. But electronics, make no mistake to anybody who's listening, those games out there are meant to addict the people who are using them. The social media is meant to keep you hooked. There is an amazing article in Psychology Today, and I can't remember exactly what the article's name is, but it is about the addictive nature of electronics and how children and young people, young meaning say young teenagers to mid-teenagers, are so susceptible to addiction to electronics. And it is important to limit. I mean, we limit the electronics use and what they're being used for. Video games significantly limit. I know it's hard. If there's parents out here that are thinking, Carrie, you're insane, I cannot imagine taking it away from my kid. I'm not insane. I know it's super hard. I have a 12-year-old. He's been off school, you know, I was, you know, homeschool, whatever, and since March. But you have to do it. Your child is getting addicted to electronics, and it is not healthy. And the person who wrote the article also has a documentary called Screenagers. And for anybody who like, I'm serious, really seriously watch it and take it seriously and think about your kids and what you can do to work with them to make sure they have a healthy relationship with electronics.
No, I 100% agree. I'm like a no television person. And, you know, I just don't ever feel good, you know, when I'm involved in that kind of thing. So I just feel like if it doesn't make me feel good, it doesn't have a place, you know, in my life. But
Yes.
but I know this isn't, you know, what you came here to talk about.
However the conversation goes and however we can be of service, this is really of service to talk about this. And it's not a popular conversation.
No.
But
Well, if the parents are addicted as well, you know, they certainly can't see how their kids are addicted, right? It's just like, yes, well, I am on Facebook 24/7, but you know, that's the video game. That's different. Well, actually not so much, you know? Yeah.
No.
It's difficult. Now, how did you kind of create this intentional family plan? Did you and Todd always have this since you were together to sort of like
Oh.
be here, this is where we want to be?
um, yes and no at different periods, but we were in a really low spot about 6 years ago. Um, I'd say when Todd and I got married, we really felt like we've always felt a very, very deep bond to each other. It was just a soul level, like we had to be together type of feeling, which is super magical. But then, you know, life happens. We were in our 20s, and had this vision of what life is supposed to be, the Midwest vision of get a great job that pays good money. It doesn't really matter if you're all that passionate about it, do the right thing, have a house in a nice community, have a kid or a couple, have a pet. It's like go to church, all these things that are like this. I call it the dream in a box. And so we were living the dream in a box, and for a while that was okay. I mean, we were just learning, and I always tell people the gateway to something different was after I came back from maternity leave with Daniel. I was at Deloitte. I was a tax consultant at that point in time, and I was about to make partner, and it was in the midst of the financial crisis. And I went to the partners and I said, "Look, we're going into a very intense time in our world, and I know that partnership spots are going to be very limited, but I feel that I'm ready, and I feel that I bring that kind of value to the firm. We need to figure out how to make it happen or not. And if it's not, then that's fine. I'll just, find wherever my course is meant to be, which won't be here." And a couple days later, one of my mentors came back to me and he said, "I think I have something that would be perfect for you." And I said, "Well, what is that?" And he said, "Well, how about you move to India for 2 years?" And I looked at him and I said, "You've lost your mind. I have a 4-month-old baby. How do you think I can move to India for 2 years?" And he said, "Well, why not? This might be the perfect time." And I went home and I told Todd, and Todd was like, thought I was insane. But as we thought about it and discerned, we realized that it really actually was the perfect time. Todd was staying home to take care of Daniel. We didn't have to worry about school or anything else. And so I said, "Well, if I make partner, I'll move." And so about 10 months later, we were on a plane moving to India. And that was the first step into life is different. And life could be different. Our parents were not thrilled at all. And Christine, I just noticed, I think you're on mute. I don't know if you intend that.
I am while you're talking,
Oh,
because just to make
oh,
sure there's no background noise
great.
or whatever,
Got it.
to limit the background noise.
Got it. Great. Um, so we went to India and we came back 2 years later. And anybody who's done an assignment in anywhere in the world, particularly in a developing country, will tell you you're going to come back changed, and you may not really even understand that at first. It might not be readily apparent. And at first, it was like this huge contraction back into the dream in the box. It was like we did that thing. It was super intense. We made the best out of it. We traveled all over. It was great. And now we're going back to the dream in the box and comfort and safety. And that was really wonderful for a couple years. But that like little opening that we created when we moved, it created this path that you really can't stop once you're on. You really, it's with tremendous resistance, which I found because I realized several years later, I really, this isn't the end game. There's more. There's something more that I'm meant to be doing. There's something more for this life. I was also traveling every week. I was not, I didn't have a life. I was not happy. And it took me an excruciating 10 months to finally say I have to leave, because I was just resisting it. I was resisting that opening that I had created. and I wasn't willing to walk through it, but I knew at some point I was going to have to, and I finally did. And I left Deloitte 10 months later. And when I left, I didn't realize how much repair our family needed. We were in a very, very um, dark spot. We individually needed to do a lot of work. We needed to do a lot of work as a family. My husband, about a year later, came to terms with an alcohol habit that had just completely overtaken his life. And he's now been sober for almost 3 years, which is awesome.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. And it's wonderful. And going through those times and sticking it out together and staying in the hard conversations and saying, I love you and I'm here to support you, but I'm not here to be responsible for you. Not enabling behavior. That's all really, really freaking hard.
Definitely.
Every day you have to wake up saying, we're not going to fall back into that pattern we were in before. And if we do, we're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
And that started the questioning, the questioning of how, and it's really interesting because me leaving Deloitte was a big change. But when we look back on the one decision that changed everything for us, it was eliminating alcohol. Now, there are people in this world who can have a glass of wine or have a beer and not have one for a month and not care. And that's wonderful. For my husband, that wasn't possible. But what that change did was it opened us up to looking at life very differently. We were always in a culture, what I call a culture of alcohol. I think a lot of people are in a culture of alcohol where everything revolves around alcohol. Celebration, reward, sadness, grief, disappointment, everything. A beautiful sunny day, a rainy day where you have to stay inside. It's all a reason to drink. And honestly, I kind of wondered, how do you have a party without alcohol? I didn't know. I didn't know. It was really interesting too, because my husband was the one who was drinking too much and it was really overtaking him. And Todd needed to stop drinking. I was sort of a take it or leave it type of person with drinking. But what I found was that I was the person that had more baggage in my life related to alcohol because of alcohol problems that people in my family had, for many generations. And I discovered that I had a huge amount of healing necessary with regard to alcohol. I never would have known that. What it did though was it opened us to living life differently. When you aren't drinking every Saturday afternoon, you think of all kinds of other really interesting things to do. And our idea of fun now is going scuba diving and going out on 2 or 3 dives a day, or going and spending an entire day on a mountain, out in the middle of nowhere. That's super fun for us. Our lifestyle is so active and we are so much healthier because the choices we make are just totally different. We completely changed our diet. It just sort of happened naturally because we didn't have alcohol in our lives. And we started to just look at everything differently. Why would I choose to go to that restaurant? I don't really like their food. Oh, it's because they had alcohol. I know this to you, this might sound kind of goofy, but to me, it was just like this whole new world of living that wasn't at all anchored in, when are we going to have happy hour?
And I'm laughing and nodding my head because I don't drink. Just because it's not part of my healthy lifestyle, like you
Right.
say. And it bothers people. They
Hmm.
don't understand it. Do you know what I mean? They just can't. Well, why don't you drink? Well, first of all, you know, it, I don't mind those questions because it's just like, it's just a healthy choice. But what if I wasn't, you know what I mean? What if I had a huge problem with alcohol? What business is it of yours? But also I I notice how other people respond, so they're like, if I don't say it, I don't go to a party and say, well, I'm not having alcohol, but people will look at me and, well, what are you drinking? I'm like, oh, this is, sparkling water. Oh, you don't drink? And I'll be like, no. Well, I don't drink that much either. I do not care anything about your drinking habits at all, but they need to tell you because they have some sort of thing around it. And I actually remember, this is really funny, when I was working, a real job, I was at it was like similar to, I'm sure you've had a million of these. You're at a business trip, you're out with a bunch of colleagues, you're at some bar, and I'm drinking whatever, some, concoction of club soda with some kind of juice or whatever. And one colleague on either side of me, both of them, having had several drinks and trying to think what they could do to get me to have a drink.
Oh, yes.
And so my one colleague who was a vegetarian was like, oh, if you'll have, a glass of wine, I'll have a steak. And I'm just like, I said to him, how long have you been a vegetarian? It is really that important to you for me to have a drink, then that you would give up your vegetarian? It was just so bizarre. And of course, the next day, this is all forgotten, and they're just like, thinking, oh, I feel really crappy, and you're so smart because you didn't drink. And like, it's just like, it is amazing how ingrained it is in our culture. And you know what else actually that freaks people out is I don't drink coffee. And it's like,
Mm.
what? How do you get up? How do you, it's just like, well, when you don't have a glass of wine at night, you don't always need a cup of coffee in the morning. It's like, it all just ties together. But it bothers people. You're like, oh my God, well, do you want some tea? They don't know what to offer you. They don't know what to, when you go to their house, what can you have? Oh my God, I have to get herbal tea for you. It's such a hassle. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I completely get it. And I drink decaffeinated coffee. I don't drink any caffeine because caffeine really, really affects my system. And I totally get it. People it's like, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty or judge you at all. These are just my choices.
Exactly.
Um, but the the challenge is, in our culture, so many things are encouraged that really just keep people powerless. And what we found when we eliminated alcohol was a huge sense of personal power and a huge amount of creativity in our life expanded for us. And our son, just he he noticed a dramatic change in the activities that we do with him. And it's just, and we have, we aren't going to happy hour, so we're out on a hike talking about what do we want our life to be, what kind of impact do we think we're supposed to make on the world, what do we really want, what's next. There's just a huge amount of creative, expansive energy opened up when you don't feel like you have to do this, eat this, drink this, look at this, watch this, all those types of things, because there are so many different, I believe, Todd, my husband, does not identify with the label of an addict. He won't deny that he had an addiction, but he identifies more with saying he's alcohol free or he's sober. And it's more of a way of just, it's positive energy. You bring positive energy to the choice that you made in your life. And when I look at it and I examine myself, I examine, I just look at our world, reality is we all are addicts in some sort of little or big way, whether it's food or work or gambling, pornography. There's so many different, social media.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
we all find ways to sedate ourselves. And even the most self-aware people, we can all find ourselves in little dips and valleys where we're grabbing for the phone all the time, or drinking, or eating too much, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just recognizing, what I tell people is, what are the things that you think you can't do without? What are the things in your life, the activities that are rewards, celebrations? They help you sedate grief and sadness and disappointment. What's your go-to? And when you can identify that go-to, whether it's a pint of ice cream, or it's the phone, or it's whatever, alcohol, pills, pot, whatever it is, this isn't a judgment zone.
Right.
It's helping you understand you can free yourself from that place.
Yeah. I call it like the dumbing down of America, when there's just so many distractions, so many ways that we cannot focus on what's actually going on in the world, right?
Yes.
And it's a shame. It's really a shame. And every day there's a new one. I actually think in some ways, COVID is that right now. Like everybody's so focused on, oh, I don't want to get it. I got to be get it. Da, da, da. And it's just like, okay, this is happening, right? We can't do anything about it, but it's time to like move on. I mean, it's hard to say this because people get very defensive and, this is terrible and people are dying. Well, you know what? People die every day. And however this thing is going to run its course, it's going to run its course, whether we drag it out by doing whatever we do, or whether we like all jump in and do our thing. And like Brazil, it was like, oh, Brazil's got all these cases. Yeah, they're all getting it. They're all getting over it. And they're moving on with their lives. You know what I mean? They're not like sitting around like, I don't know. I feel it's a huge distraction right now, and it's changing people's lives, not for the better,
Oh, you are so right, Christine. And the best thing any of us can do is keep our bodies healthy.
Yep.
To follow prudent procedures when we go out. I told somebody, I was like, my pandemic experience is, I go to the grocery store, which I go to. We go to hiking trails.
Yeah.
You're at your cabin. You probably are outside all the time.
Yeah.
Like, my life really isn't that impacted by this, and I'm not reading the news constantly. I make myself informed, but that's it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, and it's becoming, unfortunately, for a number of people, an excuse to
Absolutely.
fall back into that valley.
Yeah.
Instead of empowering themselves.
Yeah. I know people who are like, I'm not going to leave the house until there's a vaccine. I'm just like, my aunt, I've lost her, unfortunately, but I had an aunt who was exactly 50 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And when she was in her last years of life, she lived to be 105. Amazing woman, really awesome. She painted, like oil painting until she was 103, and then she had to give it up.
Oh,
like,
what a wonderful person.
she was great. But in the last years of her life, I was interviewing her like once a month. I'd go over and just ask her a bunch of questions. And she talked about, she lived through the Spanish flu. And she said, the whole family was really sick. A lot of people were really sick. And then, we all got better and lived on, and lived our lives. And I figured that's what was going to happen with this. But, the government thinks that they can keep us from, I don't know, getting it or something. I'm just like, how? It doesn't work like that. I don't know. How's it going to die out? Right. I don't know anything about viruses, obviously, but it has to run its course, it has to do its thing. Right. It's not just going to starve to death. You know what I mean? It's not going to die on its own. I don't think. Maybe it will just peter out on its own. I don't know. I don't know how these things work, but I'm not 100% convinced that there's anything we can do about it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Except, as you say, take care of our own bodies, our own lives, go outside, eat right, drink plenty of water, like blah, 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 all the things that you're supposed to be doing that, people don't do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So do you help, when you are helping people to create, their life that includes, because women, right, it's, you're talking about your time at Deloitte and your husband's taking care of your son. That's
Mhm.
a fairly, non-standard, if you will, way of structuring your family, right? I mean, that's
For sure.
not that, it's not necessarily the done thing, although it is becoming more popular and
Mhm.
more accepted, I guess. But um, tell me a little bit about making that decision and how you came to do that. And then I want to know, when you left, when you decided to leave Deloitte, did you already know what you were going to do next?
Yeah. Yeah. So I my career just took off. I had the opportunity to make partner at Deloitte. A very, very lucrative career, but also incredibly demanding. And my husband wasn't real thrilled with what he was doing. He was working in construction, and he had moved up and up and up, and he was in a supervisory role, which he would far rather be in a tradesman sort of role. He's super creative, really good at a number of different trades. And it was like, well, you have a business degree, so you should be a supervisor. But he didn't like that. And so he was going through this sort of what should I, what am I really doing? And he's, like I said, he's super creative. He'd always wanted to do more photography, and it just made sense. We didn't want Daniel to have to be in daycare a ton. My job, I was going to have to travel, and then we had the opportunity to move to India, and that's very difficult to have what's called a trailing spouse that has a job. So it just all fell into place. And it's interesting because at first it seemed like, oh, this is perfect, this should be perfect. And I watched all the men that I worked with have wives who were staying at home, or they had a very, very limited career focus, and it worked perfectly for them. And so I thought, well, this should work perfectly for us. But what we found is, and we've done a lot of research on this, now at looking back on this with just what other female breadwinners experience, is that I was pretending to be a man, to be successful in a very patriarchal system, and then expecting my husband to be a woman. And what it led to was both of us being completely unauthentic, feeling very, very empty. And it led my husband to addiction. It led me to a very close to a breakdown. And when you're going through something like that, you think you're the only one. You think it's just you. And we found this last year, we started to do more research because people kept saying, well, gosh, you guys really have done such an amazing job getting through what you got through and where you are now. Why aren't you doing more work with female breadwinners? Why aren't you focusing on female breadwinners and their spouses? And we kind of like looked at people like, well, is that really an issue? Like, we just thought we were weird. Like, we just couldn't handle it. And we started doing research and found that female breadwinner marriages end in divorce at a higher rate, the infidelity rate is higher. And then we started to do our own research. We've surveyed over 100 women, some who are still married, some who have divorced. Excuse me. And I've interviewed a number of them, and it is unbelievable how the challenges that the female breadwinners face are so similar. And we think we're in this society where we always want to think we're like way farther along than we are. And like, oh, we're also focused on equality. Well,
Yeah.
that's great for like, corporate mission statements and headlines in newspapers and conferences and initiatives. But when it really comes down to it, women who are working all the time still go to places and people say, who's taking care of your kids? And men who are staying at home still go out with their guy friends, and their guy friends say, oh, you're a kept man. And you know what? It doesn't matter what kind of stuff we say in the news, what kind of articles we write about equality, how many fancy conferences we have about gender parity and this and that and all these buzzwords. What matters is the human experience, and the human experience is not changing. And the human experience leads to a deep sense of shame and worthlessness. It doesn't have to be that way, but it takes understanding and a commitment to do things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and so much of it is, it's just society, right? Society tells us what our job is, but it's also our makeup, right? I mean, women are different. They are more nurturing. They
Yes.
do have different personalities than men do, and your parenting styles are going to be different. So even if society was telling you you're supposed to be this way, you're still not necessarily going to be like that. Not to say that men aren't nurturing or whatever, but we are built differently. We are somewhat wired differently.
I totally agree. And Christine, one of the big misses that we're seeing right now in this whole quest for women to be equal, and I think this also is an issue with diversity, is that we all want to get people seats at the table. We all want everything to just be grand. And the same scheme that we've been living in. And the challenge is that women are different. We bring different skills to the table. Maybe all those seats at the table that we want to say, we'll give one to a woman, one to, a Latino, one to an Asian, all
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
Maybe those seats need to be different.
Right.
Maybe
Exactly.
we need different seats, and maybe it's not at a table.
Right.
It's somewhere
Maybe we should be
else.
sitting cross-legged out in the field somewhere, and the heck with all this other
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. And that's the challenge, is that we need to get to a point where we say our systems aren't necessarily correct, or let's not say correct. They aren't meeting the place that we've evolved to. Because, I think that, like, these systems in many ways have served us really, really well in different times and places in history. Where we are now is a very different and much more evolved space. And we're ready for some really major shifts, and letting women be women, and letting people from different cultures be who they are, and bring that in the way that's most authentic to them, instead of just getting placed at this table, where we're all counting, and, like, it's more important, like, how many are there,
Right.
and do they even have voices?
Right.
So yeah, and for women, we have got to honor who we are. Our world needs us. Our world is sick.
Yeah.
We are here for a reason, and it is not to try to pretend to be men to be successful. It's to
Right.
bring ourselves most powerfully as women, along with the men, honoring both.
Yeah, absolutely. Neither one of us needs to be like the other. We can
No,
be, we're not, I mean, we're equal as far as, like, we all should be respected equally, but we're not like the same,
no,
we all of what we have bring has value, but we're not the same. And that's true of every, different cultures and different colors and different religions. Everybody has a different way of
absolutely.
looking at things. And if we're all trying to be homogenized, everybody suffers. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So now you ultimately left Deloitte. Do you think you could have stayed there and had the same type of life and the same type of balance that you have now?
Oh, I think about that question a lot. I think I learned a lot of lessons in the last bit of time I was at Deloitte, that if I really felt in my heart that is where I was supposed to be, I may have been able to do it. There were a lot of the issues were me, and my addiction to achievement, to status, to getting ahead, et cetera, et cetera. I just, like, that whole type of culture and whole type of system, it just fed my ego. And when I started to recognize that and make a lot of changes and got really went on an amazing spiritual journey, I think I could have stayed and had a very different experience. Um, but that wasn't where I was meant to be. My time there had ended, and it would be very difficult for me to be in the type of culture that's so forward looking. You know, there's so much like, it's so interesting because it's so short term and it's so long term. So what I mean by that is short term results, long term reward.
Yeah.
Short term results, like you have to achieve these results every single, like very short term. It's not looking at the long term, but the long term reward is like pots of money when you retire. So you'll never have to do anything again. And that just wasn't something that I was interested in, even far before I went through this major just change in awakening. I absolutely refused for our financial advisors to ever tell us what the retirement projection was as a partner at Deloitte. I said, I don't want to know. I don't ever want to depend on it.
Yeah.
I don't want us to increase our lifestyle so we have to depend on it. Mm-hmm. Because if I want to leave, I want to be able to leave.
Right.
And that's, you know, there is a very high expectation for a person in that type of position, and you get paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
So maybe that's fine. That's not for me to say. For some people that works just fine. But that expectation of how you handle your life right now and what the reward is later, that just isn't something, that's just not how I felt aligned in my life.
Well, what you touched on just then is so key, because people, you know, we expand to fill the available space. So we are making this much money, so we're spending this much money, and we're making this much money, and then we're spending that much money, you know, and it just continues, so that you do get yourself into that trap. It's not just the adrenaline junkie piece of it where, you know, like you say, the status and the reward and the ego and the, you know, it's also, you know, the adrenaline, like you're running around and you're doing this and doing that. But then you also, once you stop and say, gee, I don't know if I'm happy, you look at your expenses and you say, well, but I can't leave. I can't afford to leave this, you know, because I'm just making all this money, which is, you know, crazy money, maybe more than I should be paid. And who else is going to give me this kind of money to do, you know, a different type of job that I'm going to really love, right?
Oh, yeah. And one of the new partners would come to me and they would say, you know, what's like your biggest bit of advice that you can give me? And my advice always was, do not buy the lifestyle. Don't get into it. Don't buy the lifestyle, because when you buy the lifestyle, you are signing away your soul. Yeah. And you may stay here for the next 30 years and be a super senior partner and earn uber money, but it's because you want to be here, not because you have to be here. Yeah. And that was you know, I made a lot of really bad decisions, or I don't want to say bad, like let's not judge them, but a lot of decisions that I look back, I'm like, wow, you know. But one of the decisions that we made that was a really, like, far more forward-thinking decision than at that point my other decisions in my life was this decision to just level out our lifestyle and be happy with what we had. And we had a very, very nice house, but we bought it at the bottom of the market. And that was I didn't have real expensive cars or purses or jewelries. Just didn't do that. And that was my little kernel of freedom. You know?
Yeah. I mean, that's excellent advice, because people do get trapped.
Yeah.
Now, when you decided, okay, this isn't for me, you had your little glimmer and say, oh, I'm that little hole that's showing me my future life is getting a little bit bigger and I want to go there. Did you know what you were going to do when you left, or did you say, I got to go?
No, I actually didn't know. I always say I left without a job, without a title, and without a business, without really an idea of what I was going to do. All I knew that I wanted to do something impactful. I wanted to do something that was meaningful. And for a while, I worked with people who wanted to create purpose-driven businesses. And so I combined my coaching and mentoring experience, my business experience, and worked with people to make that transition themselves. And that was fine. It was nice. It helped me bridge that, corporate to business owner gap. And maybe about a year ago, I started to have these feelings like, I don't think this is really it. It's something more. And that's what led us to start to really delve into the female breadwinner work, really start to think about how we can share our experience as a family to help other families see that it is possible, that you don't have to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
And our real heart, our real place is not, me being a business consultant, that's not why I left Deloitte. I left Deloitte to do something. And right now, in many ways, we're in the midst of a really interesting shift because we've made this move. We're doing a number of what I call financial freedom projects, which is creating different streams of income. And we're creating this family and this life. And in many ways, the people who I share my journey with, they look to us to say, well, maybe that is possible. How would I do that? And Carrie and Todd and Daniel are really honest about their imperfections. We've talked very, very honestly about addiction. We feel it's of service. We don't have shame about it. We're proud of Todd's courage.
Yeah.
And that's really where our heart is. It's with helping people imagine that things can be better than they can even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's true. So many people are wanting to hide the parts of their lives that were not successful. We don't want to go out there and say, oh, this happened and it sucked and this happened and, and this is how we got over it, because you want to be out there and say, oh, I've got it all figured out, let me just, right. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to have that, just sharing those deep parts of yourself. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
How do people work with you how do you find people and when you connect with somebody, what kind of work do you do with them?
Yeah. So I'm really easy to find. So Carrie Sechel, you can find me on YouTube. I put videos out every week. You can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. You can also email me. I'm Carrie at carriesechel.com. I'm super accessible. And I would love to hear from anyone who's listening to this and is like, wow, I need to understand more. And how I work with people is really a discovery with them about what it is that they need. I don't do a ton of one-on-one coaching. Right now, we're shifting to connecting ourselves and connecting with other people who are really committed to living their lives authentically. I call it lead, live, and love authentically. And giving people a place where they can do that safely. Authenticity is a journey. It's not like one of those things you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I know what my authentic person is, and I'm going to be that every single moment of every day. Anybody who tells you that is totally BSing you. It is a progression, and it changes over time because you open yourself more and more and more to deeper levels
Yeah.
of who you are. Being able to be around other people who are on that journey is so critical, because there are so many places where people aren't authentic. And that's really that is the most important, important service that we can have. And as we move forward, what we plan to start doing in 2021 is more small in-person experiences with families outside. Come hike with us.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll have
Yeah.
to see how things go with COVID, but the vision is to help people create stronger connections, and to imagine that things can be better than they can even imagine, and to start taking those little steps to get there.
Nice. That's beautiful. And everything I should mention, all the things we talked about, including the links to all your social medias and websites and stuff, is all going to be on my website, on the podcast website, which is getyourfillpodcast.com. So if that's not where you're listening, you can go there and find all the links, including the link to the video, so you can see Carrie's smiley face as we're speaking. And I just wanted to say, just to follow up with what you were just saying, because I feel like authenticity and vulnerability are like two sides of the same coin, right? And that's why you need that community, because being vulnerable is difficult when you're with people who aren't, maybe supportive, right? I mean, it's not an easy journey, and it's not easy to put yourself out there. So it's wonderful that you give people a safe space where they can evolve.
Yes. Well, and I always say that there are two big, huge challenges to authenticity. One is the challenge of breaking out of the community that has helped you define who you are. And when you aren't who you are anymore in that community's eyes, whether it's a family, a church, a community, like a local community, an organization, whatever that is for you, breaking out of that is incredibly hard, because it breaks that human need for attachment and connection. So that's incredibly hard. So you need other people to help you bring that new self, where it may not be as welcome or understood. People might still love you, but they might not understand you. And it's something that I've had to deal with personally. The other is that, we all have collective trauma. We all have trauma individually around just not being able to be who we are. It's not safe. And so being that vulnerability, it creates all those body reactions in us. That's like, this isn't safe. It's not safe for me to be who I am. And being around people who help you start to believe it could be safe is healing.
Do you think that was part of what led you to like leave your little community?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we just didn't feel anymore that we connected. We needed to be around more people who had active lifestyles and were more focused on health. And not that there aren't people in Ohio who don't find those things important. It was just one of the several factors that led us to come out here. And one of the challenges that I've had, I love my parents, I love them dearly, they're wonderful, but we have a harder time understanding each other now.
Yeah.
That love, it doesn't mean I love them any less,
Right.
or I don't want to be part of their life, but the way I eat, the way I socialize, the way I celebrate, everything is completely different than it used to be. And we don't have as much in common.
Yeah, I totally get that. I have I totally get that. It's, you have to go out and find people who you have things in common with now, because people can't, once you just climb out of that box, right?
Mhm.
You're in a whole new world and people just can't reach you anymore. And it's, and you can feel crazy. You can feel like you're just being like some kind of a nut, you know, with all your, you know, oh, you're doing all that new age stuff or whatever, you know, and you're just like, well, you know, yeah, this is the package, you know, like this is what you got, you know, love it or leave it, you
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough. Well, hold on a sec. I'll let that car go by. I don't know how much you can hear I mean, it is like off the beaten path, but at the same time, there is a street out front here that, you know, sometimes motorcycles and stuff go by. So I try to silence. But Carrie, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything,
Thank you.
what should I have asked you that I failed to ask you? What do you want to share that I forgot to ask you about?
There's one last thing that I want to give people as a really actionable thing that you can do right now.
Thank you.
And that is, I know that the people listening to this are busy people that have lots of different interests, different things that you feel responsible to, probably out there, you know, careers or businesses or jobs or whatever it is, and wondering, how do I make time for everything in my life? And if people are out there that have younger kids who are now home because of COVID, there's just so much going on. And getting really focused on what really is important. One of the biggest mistakes I see people making is following what I call like the checklist for how to be a good community member or a good parent or a good this or a good that. And the reality is that those checklists are BS. So I'm going to give the example for a parent. And this could be, maybe you aren't a parent. This could apply to your spouse. It could apply to your best friend, your partner. It could apply to whomever it is in your life you've chosen to journey very, very closely with. Whether or not, in the kid example, you go to the bake sale or you go on the field trip or you're the classroom mom or any of that stuff, it doesn't matter. It means nothing. Stop doing it. Invest that time in true quality time and conversations with the people you love. Like I worked all morning this morning and I had a little window of time. That's why I'm not all gussied up right now, because my son is here. He doesn't have any friends and he needs time with my husband and I. And so he and I took a little picnic and we went down to a stream by the cabin that we're staying in, and we sat out and had lunch together. Those times make your relationship. Kids want to know you, especially, you know, whether the kids are, you know, your kids or their family friends, or they want to know you. They want a relationship. And it's the same thing with a spouse or a partner or a best friend or whomever it is. All that checklist stuff, it doesn't matter. When you have limited time, focus on the true, real conversations and the connection, and that will change your life immensely.
I 100% agree. That's beautiful advice. And, you know, I have an analogy for you because, and it's the difference between being a traveler and being a tourist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I lived in London for a number of years and, well, not that many, 2 years, like you in India, did my little expat assignment.
Mm-hmm.
But people would come visit and some of them would be like, you know, hey, you know, let's go visit your favorite restaurant, or let's just hang, let's do this. Can we take a walk, whatever? And some would come with a list and say, we've got to go see Big Ben. We've got to go see and we like literally, you drive up, they'd get out, take a picture, get back in the car, and we'd go to the next thing, or get back in the bus, or however we got there. I mean, you know, the two experiences are night and day. Night and day. Yes, they went home. They had all the appropriate pictures. They could tell their friends, yes, I saw Big Ben. Yes, I saw this, other, saw that. But did you experience London? Did you feel it? Did you understand? Do you know anything about what it's about? You know what I mean? And that's exactly what it is with what you're saying with the family. You know, yes, you went to the bake sale and you did the thing and you saw the baseball game and blah, 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 blah. But are you a family? Do you feel it? You know, are you actually, you know, together doing your thing together, experiencing the real life? Yeah, 100% agree. Beautiful advice. Thank you. Okay. There's all the information, all the ways for people to reach you on the website, getyourfillpodcast.com. And anything else, anything coming up that people should absolutely 100% make sure they attend or be part of or get involved in or anything like that?
You know, I don't have anything specific like an event. Everything's so different right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I'd say to people right now is spend time outside away from the noise.
Yep. Away from the television.
Get off the social media, get off the TV and the constant newsreels.
Yeah.
You know, social media once or twice a day, checking in with people, that's totally cool. But like the constant, like somebody called it doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Just get out of that. Wherever you are, go outside and just feel that expanse, just letting your nervous system get away from the fear and the noise and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
That's the event outside.
Yep. It's happening now.
It is.
At a forest near you.
It's free.
It's free.
It's free. There's no excuse. And if it's raining, wear a raincoat.
Exactly. Well, thank you very, very much. It's been wonderful to meet you. Really enjoyed it.